On your own from the age of 15. Reckless, aggressive, and undisciplined.
This is a rebellion, isn't it? I rebel.
We have a mission for you. A major weapons test is imminent. We need to know what it is and how to destroy it.
Is that clear?
Yes, sir. May the Force be with us.
Welcome to my nerd world and episode number 65 of the Star Wars podcast. I am your host, John Justice. A few days late, I'd call it a bonus podcast, but it was supposed to be out over the weekend, and that didn't happen. So hopefully there won't be too much time in between this podcast and the next podcast. However, it is late for very good reason, because we do have something very special on the podcast this week. I have some items that I want to run through in the news. Not a ton to talk about, just a couple of things of note that I want to get into. And then we have something very special for this podcast, and I think I mentioned it in a previous podcast, but if I didn't, I host a radio show, Justice and Drew, here in Minneapolis, KTLK, Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130 and 103.5 FM, TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com. So on that show is me, Justice, Drew, who hosts the show with me, and then our producer, Samantha. We call her Sam. Sam is 21 years old, and only sheltered in the aspect of she hasn't seen a lot of movies that really shaped my life and Drew. I mean, look, and that's mostly just because of age. I also think a bit of her background and growing up, it just didn't lend itself to an opportunity to see, and the fact that she's only 21 didn't lend itself to the fact that there's just a lot of really important movies in my book that she hasn't seen. And so part of what we've been doing is giving her assignments every single week to watch various films that we all found, whether it's myself, Drew, or comedian Brian Miller, who also hosts a movie talk show that we do every week, TNC Movie Talk, where we go through the movies that came out that week and the Blu-rays and DVDs being released that week, and then we look back 10 and 20 years to movies that were released in the past that week. So we've been giving her various assignments, and with Rogue One coming up, we want her, and are having Sam, and she wants to as well, see all the Star Wars movies because she's never seen any of them. Now, this is really exciting for me on a number of different levels, and I'll get into this as soon as I get past a couple of news items. And it's exciting to me because it's the first time that I am going to be able to watch somebody who I consider a good friend watch these movies with fresh eyes. And that's just that is amazing to me. It's probably way more important to me than it is to Drew or to Sam, but you know, Star Wars has shaped me and my life so much and brought so much joy to my family, my wife and my boys, that the opportunity to be the person that in some way, shape, or form introduces somebody to this world that I find so important, and the potential to see that person become another fan is really exciting to me. And I'm pleased to say that I think there's an opportunity that might happen based off of her reaction of seeing A New Hope. So what we'll do is I'll give you a bit of my commentary, what I observed watching Episode 4 A New Hope with Sam, and then I'm going to play you a portion of audio that we recorded earlier in the week. This would have been on Monday. We watched the movie on Saturday from after our show. We do a post-show podcast a couple times a week. And we sat down, Drew and Sam, and talked a bit about the movie and got her thoughts. Now, there's some things that we didn't do. And at first I was a little disappointed with this, but I'm actually glad we didn't. So I'll get into that portion of it here in just a moment. There are a few news items in the world of Star Wars that I do want to talk about just briefly. There really hasn't been a lot of new news as it relates to Rogue One, counting down the days. I'm not sure what I'm more excited about, the election or Rogue One. Well, I'm more excited about the election. I just want the election to be over. But there's not a lot of new news as it relates to Rogue One. We never did get an international trailer, and I was really expecting that we were going to, and that didn't happen. We did get some new footage in an unlikely place, and this is not really all that different from what happened with The Force Awakens, where there were some automobile commercials that showed some footage. Now, the footage in those commercials was not footage from the film. I'm fairly certain that the footage that we're seeing in these commercials for Rogue One, that there is some footage from the film. If you go on YouTube, it's probably the easiest thing I could do to kind of point you there. If you go on YouTube and you look for the Gillette Rogue One commercial, there is it's a commercial, that basically highlights some scenes on Scarif leading up to the battle that we've seen in the trailer with the ADAX and the U-wing. It basically profiles a freshly shaven young soldier who is getting into a U-wing and traveling into battle. Now, the commercial ran in reverse. It started, with the end of a group of rebel soldiers coming face to face with stormtroopers on a sandy beach, and then it ran in reverse of how they got there. So what somebody was clever enough to do was to reverse the video so it actually plays in order. And what's cool about that is I'm about 99% sure there's a couple of shots of the U-wings taking off from Yavin, out in space, and also flying over, heading into battle on Scarif. They're really, really quick shots, but they look incredible. What I like about it is I suspected, but I didn't realize that we were going to get multiple U-wings in the movie. Now, this is the new ship that's been created for Rogue One. You see it in the trailer. It has the long forks in the front, the four main engines in the rear. It looks like the center looks like essentially a Y-wing cockpit, and the engine setup is not all that unlike an X-wing. I love this vehicle. And we watched a video recently with Doug Chang, one of the artists who was there with the prequels, worked on The Force Awakens, is now working on Rogue One, and they talked about how they went through, they say 70, no, I want to say 75, but I actually think it was more than that, different iterations of this vehicle. They were looking to create an iconic vehicle. They wanted something on par with, say, the Millennium Falcon. And with what I think they achieved, especially because it looks like there are multiples of these ships, it looks like they've created another iconic vehicle on par with an X-wing or a Y-wing in the Rebel fleet. And these shots in the Gillette commercial showing multiple U-wings flying off base, flying away from planet, and flying over planet just look amazing. And I'm about 99% sure that those are shots from the film. The rest of the commercial with the freshly shaven soldier, I'm pretty sure that was shot directly for the commercial. But if you get a chance, go on YouTube, type in Gillette Rogue One commercial, and I'm sure that it will pop up there. The other item of note that I want to mention, and just only briefly, MakingStarWars.net put up an article yesterday, giving off a depiction. Oh, actually, no, they put it up on Halloween. My bad. So 2 days ago. They put up a description of, and this is a bit of a spoiler alert, no details from Episode 8, but if you don't want to know anything about Episode 8, then skip this. But this type of spoiler is really it's just costume, and then it's costume and then my theory. But basically, they describe Kylo Ren's costume, and what they describe is essentially Kylo Ren has a helmet similar to the one that he had in The Force Awakens with some changes, which would make sense because if we're to follow the logic from The Force Awakens, he doesn't leave Starkiller Base with that helmet. So he probably has another one. I'm assuming he has a couple, right, in a closet. It also mentions that apparently he has a cape that is almost identical to Darth Vader's. So I don't know if that means he's losing the hood, but apparently the sort of shaven cape of what he was wearing in The Force Awakens is gone, and a more straightforward Darth Vader-esque cape without the chain that holds it together he wears in his new outfit, and the undergarments mirror, according to their description, Luke Skywalker's Jedi outfit from Return of the Jedi. That was basically all that was given in this particular news report. What I found interesting was, and what I'm theorizing is, it seems as if, and they alluded to this in the article, that, Kylo Ren and his obsession with Darth Vader gets kicked up a notch. It's not something that you just see in, and I hope this would be the case, but it's not something that you would just see in The Force Awakens. He actually extends this and goes deeper into it in Episode 8. There was speculation, and I don't think this was based on any news reports, but there was some speculation that eventually, like, Kylo Ren would personify Vader, and I can't help but wonder if that's what this is about. I mean, that's the first thing that I thought of, that perhaps what we're seeing is a transformation of Kylo Ren conflicted in The Force Awakens, makes the decision that he makes and commits to the dark side in Snoke. And then in Episode 8, we see him head further down the path of the dark side. In The Force Awakens, of course, you hear him say, I will finish what you started, to the burned out Vader helmet. Wondering if maybe he will sort of become the embodiment of Darth Vader, the ultimate Darth Vader wannabe come Episode 9. Pure speculation on my part. I thought it was cool nonetheless. They also this week offered up some descriptions of First Order trooper armor that saying there's some variances in the First Order armor from the previous film, including this one individual who was apparently like an executioner stormtrooper. So pretty interesting stuff. Not as meaty as what we've had in the past, but I assume once we get past Rogue One and we get into the new year, since we'll be less than a year out from Episode 8, that at that point in time we will probably be getting a lot more news. In the meantime, we have Rogue One to look forward to. So there's always that. Let's go to this.
There has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
So early on in starting my new job, it came to my attention that our lovely producer Sam had never seen any of the Star Wars movies, and I made it very clear that if she was going to continue to work with us, that she was going to need to watch these movies. Okay, maybe it wasn't that harsh, but I basically said, if you want more joy in your life and you want your life to be, more well-rounded, you need to go and watch these movies. We made a decision early on, and we've talked about this in previous podcasts, that I do remember that now. We actually spent a whole podcast talking about it. That we would do basically a countdown to Rogue One with Sam. And it needed to start this past weekend in order to watch all 7 films, with the final film probably being Episode 3, and I'll explain, to be the last one that she watches before we go and watch Rogue One. And, we had a big discussion on that, and we changed our mind because in terms of the order she was going to watch, because initially we were going to have her watch 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and then 7, and we've kind of come full circle, and I think you'll actually hear that in the podcast. I'm getting a bit of ahead of myself, that she's going to watch 4, 5, 6, and 7, because we all kind of agreed that you don't really need to see the prequels in order to understand 7, apart from 1 or 2 lines, which we can fill her in on. And that's basically insurance, because I talked with Drew, and we all agreed that it was most important that she see the last 4 films, 4, 5, 6, and 7, than it was 1, 2, and 3. He's not a fan of the prequels, and I apologize. You'll hear that in the commentary in here, where he starts trolling me and getting me upset as he rips into the Phantom Menace. But I tried to properly take care of that, because I'm a prequel fan. So in the off chance that we don't have the opportunity to watch all 7 films, at least before going into Rogue One, she'll have seen 4, 5, 6, and 7. But the first sort of pathway on the journey was this weekend, and we went over to Drew's house on Saturday night and sat down and watched A New Hope. And I will say this, I'll be completely honest, it wasn't, in my opinion, sort of what I would have hoped for the optimal situation to watch the film. And maybe that was for the better, simply because, when you're in a group setting when you're with a group of people, and Sam was there, and Drew was there, and his wife was there. Unfortunately, Melinda and my family all had plans, so they couldn't come out and join us. But, when you're in a group setting, it's hard to sit down and watch a 2-hour movie nonstop without having conversations with one another. So we stopped down several times in the film, and you'll hear us talk about this. And, in retrospect, at first I was a little